two-sided question.
Sure.
One, you and David were into this very nice colloquy that began to move in a different direction about why does liberalism depend upon illiberal civil society institutions to get its work done?
Yeah.
Could you give a pithy catechesis for a dummy like me as to why that works? Why is the family, the church, the synagogue, the mosque, the school, the neighborhood, and so forth, why are those so critical? And you've touched on a lot of these things with authority and so forth, but a nice pithy version that I can put in my pocket and take home would be very, very helpful, I think, for all of us. But the flip side is also, and this is the question, one of the pressures that's beginning to emerge is some of these illiberal communities are trying to become a law unto themselves. We're seeing this in the emergence of homeschool movements. We're seeing this in the pressure to develop faith-based or religiously based family law structures. We're seeing this in the growing pressure to have independence of religious organizations and cultural organizations, especially in new immigrant communities, Islam in particular, but not exclusively, increasingly doing things on their own, without state supervision, without licensing, without registration, without any kind of jurisdiction of courts or administrative structures to look over their shoulder as to what they're doing. And that's a civil society dynamic that's becoming increasingly both one pervasive and, to my primitive mind, dangerous. And I'm wondering, in your theory of civil society, what are the brakes on that? And is that civil society beginning to encroach on some of the core functions of the state? So both sides.
Well, John, you can speak about the question that you put probably better than I, but let me take your first observation and the pithy comment. What I would say there is that liberal society depends on people who are in some way, important way, morally formed, with certain sensibilities, and including a sense of the importance of what it means to be a citizen and to be a member of a body politic and to be a participant in civic life. And yet liberal society from itself on the public level doesn't create such people. It relies on there being such people. And we've relied on, you know, the family, the school, and so forth historically to help to generate such folks so that they were prepared to be citizens when they reached a certain age and to take up their fair share of the load, if you will, for civic life. So that would be the quick response. I don't know if you can put it in your pocket or not, but that would be the quick response on that. On the other, I would say it's a very interesting observation, because in the one model where you have non-liberal institutions, if you will, and relationships and communities helping to generate citizens of a sort who can help to sustain a liberal polity at its best. I mean, a polity that respect for the rule of law, respect for human rights, genuine commitment to various understandings of human freedom and human dignity. I think I've lost the syntax of that sentence, but at any rate, to the extent that what you see is these institutions that are not per se liberal institutions cutting off that process, that is to say, becomes an end in and of itself. So that you're not forming people to go out into the world, you're forming people to be hunkered down within a particular framework that becomes increasingly separatist and sectarian. Then I think you've clearly got a problem, and the question would be, how can and should the wider society, let's assume that it's acting in a wise way, in the interests of those basic freedoms and human rights that we rightly cherish as Americans, how can it intervene in such a way that it understands and protects the values that are at stake in these institutions, but at the same time does not permit certain excesses to go forward unchecked? And I think that's going to be, as I said, you can speak to this much better than I, but you know more about it than I do. That's going to be a huge challenge, it seems to me, in the years ahead. Let me just say this: we've seen in Europe what doesn't work. You know, in the Dutch case and so forth, where you have
homogenization, where
Well, then you have the immigrant community. Actually, under multicultural ideology, you have these immigrant communities hunkered down and not expected to be full participants in Dutch society, and just sort of like, okay, let them do their thing. There are parts of France today where Sharia law pertains, and the French police just don't even enter. It would be a dicey proposition for them to do it. There are places in England that we know about where, you know, you have all kinds of institutions that are based upon principles that run directly counter to notions of equality between men and women and a whole range of other things that are going forward. And I think that that's, you know, if a society doesn't care enough, a human rights respecting liberal democracy doesn't care enough about its basic fundamental principles and institutions to defend them, then it's not surprising that it grows ever weaker over time. And I think when you that if you have a kind of soft nihilism, you know, we're not going to stand up for anything, going up against a kind of hard fanaticism in some cases, we know what's going to win. So it seems to me that that's a real danger. Not as much for us yet, but it could become one, and as it is now, certainly for Western Europe.
Although,
for sure.
You know, to me, I look upon the American historical experience as hopeful about this.
Yeah, I agree.
We've done better than
We've
most
done a lot better
at working these kinds of compromises.
We've done a lot better, and there was a journalist named Ian Baruma, I think, who wrote about the murder of Theo van Gogh, the filmmaker in the Netherlands, and was trying to account for the difference between the European experience and what we do. And he said one of the differences is when people come here, we expect them to get out of the house and go do something. You know, try to find a job, go to work, get out into the community, not just to live within themselves, and on state support. I mean, one of the things that really got to the Brits when the 7/7 bombers, these were people on the dole. These were people that the British were supporting with their checks, you know, for housing and a whole range of other things, who then, you know, had nothing but contempt in a way for a government that was sustaining in its midst people prepared to destroy it. You know, sort of look how weak this place is. They, you know, ha ha ha. You know, so I think that that's a real issue that we have to be aware of, because it's a danger zone that we've done much better at avoiding than they have in Western Europe.
Maybe we're still up to it with this next
and
round.
it does, and I'll end on this. It makes it very difficult for civic Muslims, if we may call them that, in these communities, to act, if you will, in reasonable ways, because they're put under tremendous pressure and threats, you know, from the extreme element that the government is tacitly endorsing by not doing something to stop them. So it's a bad situation, and I just wanted to end on that note, because the people facing it most keenly are folks inside the Muslim community itself.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we must bring this to a close, and I want to close with just this one comment about Eugene.
Okay.
That I was trying to think again. I was trying to get my Elsteinian, you know, the village, this Gene's village. You know, what are the principles that obtain in Gene's village? And having known Gene for a long time, and having just read you that beautiful quote about the village, one of the principles, I'm sure, is that the conversation keeps going.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you don't close the conversation. That may sound like a trite thing, but to me, it's very profound. And I want to, just in closing, read, I picked 3, but I'm just going to read one. Gene writes about this frequently. Here's one, which for sheer chutzpah, I really love. The need for, or conviction of, a correct and all-encompassing standpoint, the immediate excitement and visceral satisfaction of theories that make possible scenarios in which the analyst moves in on a given turf, sets up court, and summarily dispenses epistemic and political justice is one I eschew and devoutly hope that I avoid. And then more simply, she says, a commitment to democratic politics commits one to an imperative to keep debates alive rather than attempting to resolve them definitively by silencing one side to the dispute. So in the world that we live in now, where it's the ugliness of political discourse, where there are regularly attempts to silence the other in this exact way you're describing, one of the things about your village that I like, the everydayness of it, the fact that all this complicated business goes on and they don't divide into camps to attack one another all the time, and it's a little messy and chaotic sometimes because people are coming in and out, and they're always keeping the conversation going. It's never just, it's not over, right? Nobody just moves in and says, "Ah, this is over." So I value that tremendously in you as a person, and I value that in your work, and you've really helped a lot of us to understand the importance of this.
Thanks.
So thank you for being here tonight. Thanks all of you.